Head of Customer Deployment for dltledgers. He's based out of Singapore. He will share with you not just about dltledgers, of what the platform can do for you, but also some very interesting use cases, which I'm sure you'll find very useful. We have a couple of guest speakers with us today, and I'd like to welcome them all on board. So we have Surbhit. Surbhit is from Keventer. He will share with you how blockchain can transform trade finance in India from a trader perspective. It's very important we all understand from an end customer point of view how simple it is going to be in deploying this. Then we have Lekha. Lekha is from KPMG. She's the Associate Director. And she will share with us her point of view on how blockchain can transform trade in India, more from a professional services, consultant, advisor point of view. So we will hear from them soon. I'm going to hand it over to the next speaker, but before that, once again, friends, welcome, or should I say Mitro, then everybody I'm sure will listen to this and execute. This is not the time, it is not a wait and watch time for us. Don't get too, it could be very daunting as to how do I go about digitization. There are external parties, there's my internal systems, how am I going to get together with all this, etc. Hold your thoughts till the end of the session, have an open mind, and see how we can quickly adopt and move on with cross-border digitization. We are here with you. Thank you. Atul, over to you.
All right. Can you all hear me? Can you all hear me? Yeah, perfect. Thank you so much. Thank you, Raji, and thank you everyone for tuning in on Friday afternoon. Today, I'm going to talk about what DLT Ledger does and share some perspectives and experiences that I've seen over the last 3 years and the collective experience of the team that we have seen. So if you could go to the next slide for me, Vinod. Just talk a little bit about what we are, right? So we are independent, a blockchain platform which is in production now for over 18 months for cross-border trade digitization. We are headquartered out of Singapore and supported by various leading organizations in Singapore from a government standpoint, as well as the trade bodies in Singapore. As well as working together with a large set of banks from different regions within Southeast Asia, Middle East, Africa, and India. So today, in the short session today, I'll just introduce what business benefits that we are driving for the customers, as well as for the banks. So if we can go to the next slide, Vinod. So yeah, I think cross-border trade, it's a $17 trillion market, right? And there is fundamentally quite a lot of leaking areas, if you will, through the chain. And we are trying to digitize as much as possible and intertwine the flow that you see for the goods for cross-border movement, and trying to give efficiency to the corporates or the trading organization, so that actually they can have process efficiency within their organization, linking it to their own internal digital transformation, as well as working together in a more secure fashion with their business partners. So something that we are very strong with, where we have got a huge amount of success in terms of the adoption, in terms of getting the customers to come on board. And benefits are, some of the benefits that we see from our customers are really reduction of the trade cycle time, saving of financial cost, savings of operational cost, just an improvement on entire, the working capital movement. So all of that is what we believe are the benefits that customers are getting by digitizing their cross-border trade on a private blockchain platform. Banks are an important element or a cogwheel to this entire ecosystem. And we do work very closely with a number of banks to really provide the efficiency in their trade finance processes, as well as how the banks communicate together with their corporate customers, and how do you digitize the communication channel. As you probably know, that every single bank probably would have built some sort of a portal, but there are only 15% of the portals being used, primarily because it has just been built from a bank-centric view. It's not been built with a customer or a trade flow-centric view. So what we are trying to do is really create a participative view to model the flows as it happens today in the business world, so that there could be more adoption, and providing really a framework where even the parties which are what I call digitally poor can participate in this flow. And it's really not a zero-sum game, right? It's not that if I have 6 parties in a cross-border trade, that all 6 needs to be into the platform, right? You could very well start with what I concept called minimum viable party, which is really the buyer and the seller and a bank, right, on one side, and then the bank on the other side, and then you can have a surveyor, the logistic company, the shipping company, the insurance company, the works, right? So, again, we have a very unique adoption mechanism which allows us to really get those parties in board on a iterative fashion, so that we can continue to kind of work on it in a practical way, while we improve and give the awareness to everybody who is digitally poor to get into the platform and participate in this trade. So if you can go to the next slide, it just really talks about how what the platform is. So we are not a POC, or we are not here to do one trade here or one trade there, which is what you see today in the various consortiums or other parties who are trying to actually communicate that we have done this or that. In terms of the adoption, we have crossed just last month over $3 billion in terms of the trade being transacted to the platform. With a $400 million run rate, I think this has already hit 3.4 billion as we speak today. So that's fantastic, because there are flows already happening in a production platform that we are driving for our customers. And those flows are happening from a geographical standpoint, all the way from, Africa's, parts of Africa's, Middle East, Southeast Asia, India, Australia, Japan. And recently we just did a flow which is from North America all the way to Indonesia, right? So there are flows happening all across. And in some way, thanks to the architectural brilliance that we put together, we are now able to configure and create templates for different types of commodities and different types of products that are basically, traded around the world. So, whether it's merchandising trading, which is more like import, export, distribution, oil and energy, metals and minerals, or agri, we have customers who are digitizing their trade execution across any of those industries. So some of the sample customers you can see listed there. We have over 410 customers who digitize their own trade execution process in a private blockchain platform, which has got the UI, which has got the workflow, which has got the bells and whistles for different persona on what each party needs to do. And we have, significant set of banks, over 45 banks, who are participating to support their customers in their trade execution process. And that's kind of where we see a huge adoption that we have achieved. So if you can go to the next slide, a little bit more talk about what's in it for a bank, right? So, the banks certainly have invested a lot of digital dollars into the channel, the multi-channel operations, into making sure that they have a good trade finance portals, making sure that back end or front office and middle office are communicating really well in a well-oiled machinery. But I think it's really all about how do I reduce my cost in this, specifically in this scenario where, pretty much everyone is kind of working from home. So how do I reduce my cost of processing a particular trade transaction? And those who are in the bank, you would know that there are certain products are kind of a loss leaders, right? So you need to find out the products which are really going to be cash cow and focus on those and kind of reduce your kind of dependence on the loss leaders. So, all of those capabilities, all of those matrices that you have in terms of your cost of operating your trade finance can really be, relooked at. And in some cases, we have seen up to 5 percentage points for some of the banks that we worked in Southeast Asia, 5 percentage point reduction in their trade operation costs and end-to-end, which is significant saving by implementing trade finance digitization within the bank using the dltledgers platform. So it's all about reduction of turnaround time with the end-to-end flow, which Surbhit will talk about in terms of our trade cycle. How do we have an end-to-end flow into the network with that capability provided to the bank? And if I'm a risk head within the bank, my credit decisioning can really get that much more comfort, because now I have capability, now I have a visibility of where that particular supplier is based and what he has done in this private blockchain network with the smart contract enabled through the provenance and the tracking of that particular trade. That kind of leaves further improvement that one could do to the risk management framework of the bank. So yeah, some of the banks now can, recent transaction we just did, I think it was with Rabobank. Rabobank reduced their cycle times from 20 days to 5 days, and in some cases we have it reduced from 3 days to 1 day. So there's really a huge amount of saving that one could get in terms of reduction of cycle time, reduction of the cost, and also the responsiveness to the customers. Now, why does customer respond more on this network? Because it is built for the customer's system. So customer has their own operational system, whether their own ERP systems or finance systems or contract systems, and kind of glued in with that and connect through that as a single window to the banks that they work with. And therefore, there's much more adoption because all other people within the customer, whether the trade operation, trade finance, or front office team within the customer, are already used to working with platform, and just a natural extension as it comes to support the bank. So if you can then move on to some of the credentials that we have, these are just some of the credentials that we have. And, this is a soft launch for us in India. We have been having our development team and the back office team in Keventer in India, but with Raji coming on board the last 6 months, we have started to focus on, getting customers and supporting customers in the banks and the shipping company and logistic company within India. So these are some of the stories, some of the successes that we have seen, which is publicly available. We started off with DBS Bank in Singapore, where their sustainability story in terms of how, you could see the actual chain of an agro cycle from all the way from farm all the way to the end customers can be digitized on a blockchain platform. To the Abu Dhabi Commercial Bank, who has launched the blockchain platform based on dltledgers. Then, large Ethiopian sugar company is using to digitize their end-to-end sugar flow. What you see on the fourth one is just the one that we released earlier this week, where we have done a large repeatable transaction, and there's already a number of other transactions already started to happen, but repeatable transaction for a cross-border, cross-continental wheat movement of wheat from North America all the way to Indonesia. And the beauty of this is that it has forced all the parties. There were about 7 to 8 parties involved, and all of those parties actually were during the execution of this trade, they were getting into this COVID era where they had really no ability to go and collect the documents physically from the offices here in Singapore. So we were able to actually do a digital presentation and digital submission of the documents to really allow an end-to-end trade. And in some ways, for the people who are in the banking sector in the call, this is really a call out where, ICC has always talked about EUCP guidelines and all of that is available, but there's always, there's something which is stopping the banks to really support those digital presentation and digital submission, which I think is getting accelerated with the situation that we have today for COVID. I can go on and on. Standard Chartered Bank has been very instrumental in one of their key unique product called Avalization, and they did that the first Avalization on blockchain using dltledgers platform. So this really, my submission to all of you is, if you look at the time that we are faced with right now, I think the trade needs to happen. There could be a temporary slowdown, but we have not seen any slowdown on the trade because trade is considered a lifeline to the world economy. It's already happening. People are actually working from home, so they definitely need a secure and safe environment where they can still communicate and in a collaborative environment, communicate with their trading partners, as well as exchange documents and also the related instructions as it relates to the payment or settlement in a secure platform. So we are seeing increasing workload in our teams, and actually teams here in Singapore, we have been classified as essential services. Trade desks that operates supporting our customers and traders here in Singapore are working 18 hours a day. So it's actually a very, very busy time for us to support our customers to their digital trade journey. So finally, my wish list for India is to really support what I call touchless trade. So we in India, we have really good individual brilliance of digital islands of automation that we have done. Some of the large companies have done some good automation, and then there is really nothing, right? So DLT Ledger is really a super connector, which really connects all of those brilliance of digital island to really create an environment where, even a very small SME out of middle of India can actually participate without really having any capital outlay and participate in the flow, which could be, with a large organization on the other side or a relatively smaller bank or a bigger bank on the other side. So I think it's about connecting those digital islands with a super connector is really where the value of DLT Ledger is. So that's sort of my sharing. And I would like at this stage, it's perfect segue for me to pass it to my colleague who's, or rather our customer who is going to talk next about the story. So Surbhit, if you can hear us, over to you, Surbhit.
Good afternoon, guys. Am I audible?
Yes, sir. You are very much audible. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. To begin with, I would like to first thank the team at DLT Ledgers, Raji, Atul, and Vinod for giving me this opportunity to present a trader's perspective about DLT. And if not for COVID, we would already have been a customer of DLT Ledgers. Vinod and I have been working with certain partners whom we work with to do a transaction on the DLT Ledger platform. To give a brief background on the company that I come from, it's Keventer Agro, not to be confused with Keventers. We are two different people, two different companies. We are essentially an Eastern India-based FMCG, dairy, and food processing company. We just established Eastern India's first Tetra Pak milk plant. On a heritage basis, we have a British blood because the gentleman that started this company was Edward Keventer in 1890s when we were a colony of the Britishers, and that name still comes forward and one of the most foremost names in India in dairy. And over the years, we have expanded into fruits and vegetables, frozen, and beverages. The way I would like to structure my point of view is through a case study that we went through last year, and where we thought that had we had a solution like DLT, it could have been a perfect blend. And as Atul just mentioned, that most companies, when they look at digitizing or implementing IT, they basically look inwards into their own particular system and process rather than integrating anything external. And even if it is anything external, it gets very limited to Salesforce automation, to more warehouse management, to more supplier integration. It never happens where your client or your bank could be integrated through a single portal into your own system. And where I look at myself as a professional, I'm basically a custodian of balance sheet and P&L for my company. And what is basically that I do? My job basically, especially so in the commodity trade where the margins are so thin, we are always looking for ways to scale up without adding costs, reduce overheads, increase transactional speed, remove redundancies and errors of omission and commission, which in cross-border trade is extremely expensive. Any BL change, any wrong documentation, it just blows the roof off because of your demurrages and detentions, and improve working capital cycle. To summarize, to do more with less. And this is exactly what the DLT Ledgers platforms bring to you. If I were to put this into 4 basic problem statements that we face in the current scenario in our trade, is a basic manual trade operation where documents may flow through an ERP, but yet are to be taken a printout of, signed, sent to the bank. The bank sends it further to the customer's bank, and then further on. It's a very paper intensive process. You need to employ, if you have 4 or 5 banks, you always have 3 or 4 people juggling between banks, shuttling between banks. It's people dependent. Sometimes people are not available in our company. Sometimes people are not available in banks. It's extremely frustrating and cumbersome. Traceability and transparency, as you will see in my case study, is one of the biggest factors, whether how emails or any other mode of communication can easily be hacked into, replicated, and flows can go haywire in a moment. And how, no matter what kind of security you employ at your end, there isn't a particular technology available like blockchain, which cannot be permeable at all. I mean, any other technology that exists right now have been hacked into, have been taken advantage of by unscrupulous elements. So I would just take you through a very small case study that we went through last year with an existing customer in Africa, who we had been dealing with for the last 7-8 years. So this was a particular commodity that we were wanting to move from India to Africa, approximately $150,000 worth of goods, not too large. And we've been dealing with this customer for the last 7 to 8 years. Typically what would happen is once an order was confirmed on the email, my guys would put it into the SAP system, generate a contract, send it to the customer. The customer would send us an advance because it's Africa. We were not working on trade credit, would send us an advance, after which we would process it in a factory and put it out. Generally, we think that once we do this, we give a customer a heads up of 4 to 5 days to make a remittance. In this case, it was 14 days, 15 days, 20 days, and I happened to travel. When suddenly on one day, my client called up. He happened to call up on my WhatsApp because he knew I was traveling. And he said, "Hey, are you in America? And have you sent me emails stating that you've opened a new subsidiary in Spain because you're finding difficult to move things in India for various reasons?" And I was flabbergasted. And the elements that had hacked into the mail had even created an entity in Spain with the word Keventer. And I told him there and then, "Have you even pulled the trigger on the money?" He said, "No, Surbhit, I have not, fortunately, and I had the good sense of calling you." And I was relaxed. Now, what had happened? Emails were being exchanged, we thought, between us and the client. The client thought it was between us and him, whereas there were unscrupulous elements who had hacked into the emails and were coordinating and were replicating chats. Somebody had taken a false US number and was chatting with my client, being me, because I travel a lot. So my client thought that I was on a US number. And they were telling him all stories that didn't exist at all and asked him to move money to Spain. Now just imagine a situation like this where a simple trade with an existing customer got stuck for 25 days. Now what are the repercussions? I am sitting on raw material. My factory is not producing. My working capital is stuck. And we are basically following up a false guy for nothing. So this is the scenario 1 that happened. Now let's look at the scenario 2. Had the first thing not happened and the trade would have happened the way it was to happen, we would have received the money in 7 to 8 days. We would have processed it. We would have again documented it the way we do it and moved it through the banks. This whole process of just $150,000 would have costed us at least $1,000 to $1,500 on transactional costs to move, with people, printing, paper, working capital blockage, and back and forth of documents through couriers with banks and people. Now, if we move this whole transaction to a very basic, simple DLT ledger system, which can integrate backwards through whichever ERP that you are on, or if you are not even on an ERP, the graphic user interface is so simple that you need to do absolutely nothing. And the way they have gone back and tied up with some of the banks like Standard Chartered, ICI, and DBS, it's seamless. Now, Vinod, can you change the slide, please? Yeah. Now, if this were to flow on the DLT Ledger platform, again, go back to day 0 when the transaction was confirmed, my people would have put in the contract into SAP. The SAP linked with the DLT Ledger system would have created a smart contract backed by the blockchain technology and sent it to the buyer. The buyer, knowing that it's a secured communication, would have accepted it, forwarded it to his bank, and the bank would have made the remittance to us. And by day 1 or day 2 of the transaction being agreed upon, we could have moved, started producing goods, and in 8 to 10 days, we would have had the goods in the container. And by day 15, the goods would have been on the vessel towards Africa. Whereas in the case 1, till day 25, we were firefighting with a ghost to get our monies into bank and to start. So this is the whole importance of a very securitized system, which is a pure plug and play for anybody. For anybody, I repeat, for SME, for small businesses, for large businesses, to move at least their basic their basic important documents to your customer through the blockchain technology provided by DLT. Any other means that we employ today of communicating with our customer is extremely open to being manipulated, to fraud, and to any other external risk. And more so, nobody saw COVID coming. I mean, when I say that I would have done a transaction with DLT, it was irrespective of COVID, because I'm a huge believer in technology being an enabler without understanding the technology. I'm not a tech guy. I do not understand it. I only understand technology as a catalyst and as an enabler for my people down the line to do more and more with less and less. I have no clue how blockchain works, but when people like Atul, Raji, and Vinod come and tell me that it is the most securitized way to communicate, why don't you try it out? There is no reason for me not to give it a shot and see how it can benefit our lives in general and improve my role as the custodian of balance sheet and P&L. Going back to the problem statement that we have stated first, now, how does this technology help? Digitization as a word has been thrown around for a long, long time. It's been there for time immemorial, I believe, since the time I was born. I mean, when I was in school, I got computers when I was in class 3 and we were doing DOS. Until then, until now, digitization has been a word that has been thrown around by everybody and anybody and by every software manufacturer to any app manufacturer. But does digitization mean digitization? Does that mean that removing paper, bringing it on computer, is that digitization? Is scanning digitization? I don't believe that to be. If it is not secure, if it does not enable your workforce, if it is not faster, if it does not bring a value to your stakeholders, if it does not improve your bottom line, there is no point in digitizing it. There is no point in even investing in that technology. Hence, when DLT Ledgers came up to me with this solution and with something that is a pure SaaS model, which can plug and play with most ERP solutions, it could make me and my team far more efficient and do more and help us focus more on what we are paid for. If an SAP system can push a paperless contract into a smart contract and push it to my customer, then my customer pushes it to his bank, and so on and so forth. Only 4 people in this whole system can change the real ecosystem without the current involvement of governments, shipping lines, or any other third party. Just these 4 people, me, my customer, and the 2 banks, could absolutely digitize the whole transactional flow. Documents will still can flow on a courier basis, no problems. But that whole speed and agility that can happen through a blockchain transfer is unbelievable. You can go paperless. There can be absolute transparency with no fraud. Banks can lend to you fearlessly, knowing that they are not really financing a bogus transaction or fraud transaction. In my case study, the 2 parties were not frauds. However, if my customer, being so naive, would have pulled the trigger, that money going out of the bank would have already been a dead remittance and an NPA for my customer, irrespective of he having no intention or of doing so. So irrespective of bogus transactions, there are so much of hacking and frauds otherwise available at this point in time that a secure communication is the need of the hour. Now, which all departments does this technology impact in your organization? Operations, because it mixes seamlessly with your current ERP. So there is absolutely minimal training required because they're already working on SAP, Microsoft Dynamics, Oracle, whichever SAP system, or even if you're not, for small and medium enterprises, if you're not, this is just a plug and play system. You just need to do a basic, the same thing that you do for your banks. I mean, in terms of your login and ID, you log in an ID and you put in your some very basic things and it generates a smart contract. So even if you are a 1-member ops team, it makes your life far more easier. Financing, your trade finance costs, your cost of doing one particular transaction, your manpower time in coming back and forth to banks, 1 comma, 1 colon, 1 semicolon here and there, and the banks just reject an LC. And you need to go back and forth, type, retype it, and just makes bank and half of the time in my position, when we look at the balance sheet at the end of the year, we just feel that we work for banks. We don't work for our own organizations at times. Transparency and trust between your customer and you, between your customer, his bank, between my bank and my customer, between my bank. That is a huge bonus in today's time when we see NPAs in India by the 9 pins, and with larger names, transparency will bring in reduced interests, reduced costs, and far greater credit. And of course, the reduction in working capital cycle. In our trade, documents are money. When document flows, money comes in. In a traditional paper-based transaction, it takes at least 7 to 10 days to move paper to the customer and then get the remittance. In this case, I think Raji and Atul would tell you that a transaction can be pushed through in just a matter of seconds to the counterparty and to the third party, and money can flow in seamlessly without any interjections. So as I said, and why this is the apt time? COVID will only enhance this, and it's the right time to launch it. And the way they have launched it with a 90-day free trial, I think that's it's a no-brainer for anybody to kind of go onto the platform and try it. It's a no-cost thing right now, and yeah, I'm sold on this. And as I said, irrespective of COVID, we would have gone ahead and done one with our partners in Singapore and Olam. But I'm looking forward to a time when I could pull the trigger and do a trade on dltledgers. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Lekha, I have unmuted the line. You are next. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Should slides will you be putting up, Raji? Shall I put it in from here? Yeah, thank you. So just to give a quick introduction about myself. So I work with KPMG's blockchain and innovation team. So, as I see in the audience list, there are quite a few who have contracted with before and had talked before. So as we would all know, I've been working in the blockchain sector for more than past 3 years, and I focus more on the India perspective, and what I have seen in the trade finance perspective on what's been active and what makes sense in the current times. Can we move to the next one? Yeah. So now this is the current situation we are in the lockdown scenario. As Atul was telling, whatever might be the scenario, the trade continues. And that's very much true for India, especially the Bangalore, with lot of global centers here with GCC supporting the global operations. And as you would know, there are many of them who support the treasury trade finance operations from Bangalore here. And in the current scenario, it's very pertinent. Now, the major question what we have been asked, and very often we hear in all the discussions we are having with the CXOs across is, things are going down. There's a lot of pressure on the bottom line. The cash flow crunch has increased now, mostly because of the receivables and deliverables not happening in the usual mode. So in this, what is the typical to-do list? If you were to see a CFO's to-do list, it would look more or so, in 3 phases. Next one, please. So what we have been telling the CFOs, and you would have heard of the seminars which KPMG CEO Arun has been talking to all is, we have to accept that this is the new reality, this is the new future is going to be, this is the new normal. If so, then how do we head towards it? The knee-jerk reactions are not going to work. People are not prepared for it, and we have not geared up our operations also to work in this way. Now, in all this, what has remained true has been the need to do digitization, but the rigor in which we're going to do now is going to be far more, because now it's not digitization to be ahead of a competition, but it's just a need of to remain alive. We might have to do so. That is what most organizations are looking at. So resilience. So what to do now is to better your cash management, better your working capital, and you have sustainable cost takeout, so that you ensure that whatever you do has some kind of a savings in it. So basically what most are called frugal innovation, or a success-based model, where whatever we invest in, that investment immediately should be able to unlock value. So in this scenario, this is one of the very low-hanging fruits, is to go into a blockchain-based model in your trade finance area. As in the concept we will see, even if you were to focus on the one part of this whole overall process of trade finance, if you were to just to take the payments, there's a whole lot associated with it. The next slide, please. So if you were to, as I was saying, as Keventer's team was explaining, the things involved in the trade finance has a very large gambit of operations, from the trade, from the paper processing to tracking of the goods to the final payments through. If you were to take the large part of it, where you have your typical bank A trying to pay bank B, and here if it is intercompany, maybe within a sister concerns itself, the numbers, if you were to take a typical company of the size of Olam and others, their transactions between company is more than 5,000. And there's a big operations in treasury which is overlooking this. Their only work is towards ensuring that the FX hit in this is taken care. So this is mostly around 2.5% of their operational cost gets affected by just the FX conversion management of this. This exposure is very large, and it hits the working capital in the sense because the settlement time of T+2 which basically with all the lags and the holiday differences can be a 3-day settlement time. This is a quite a working capital question for the organizations. And within a group company, if they were to able to manage this working capital efficiently across all sister concerns, that would have improved the profitability by a large percent. In some of the discussions, I have heard that 0.5% of the profitability can be impacted if just within the group companies, if you can adjust your working capital. Because mostly, many a times, some are sitting with surplus and others are actually grappling with working capital, and they're actually taking loans in those respective countries. Now, if you were to consider a platform which is very secure, which is real time, and then you're actually overcoming the cost of reconciliation and audit, this makes life a lot more easier. And this is a kind of an initiative which can be taken at any times, even in tough times like this, mostly because it will give you an immediate cost saving. If you can expect to get savings from your treasury operations, your regulatory cost, all of this comes down, and you can have a direct cut in the manual operation that is involved in here. Okay. Can you go to the next slide, please? So if you were to look at this in the operations where if you have all the transaction happening on your distributed ledger, and you're having your cash transactions, and you don't have to take care of your FX exposure for every transaction you try to do, and try to look at what is your reconciliation cost that's going to happen every day. If you have seen that at many of the GCCs, they had 15 to 20 people just dedicated to ensuring the reconciliations are taken care, and whatever is the funds that lies in that intermediary account are settled every day. So all this cost can immediately be taken off if you were to move into this. And again, this is a very non-obstructive or direct customer touch point process. So when you want to move on to this, it can be very seamless, and the switch between the current and then the future state, it's quite seamless. I have seen this happening being done from the GCCs of one of the leading bank and one trading company, and we are currently working with one more Alcobeb company which is looking at moving on to blockchain for this area, all from the perspective of the cost savings that comes from this. The immediate being your, you have a better cost for, cash settlement, your nostro consolidation and forecasting gets better. And you can expect in 3 to 4 months, your cash forecasting, your overdraft management, all those starts looking better. Your overall risk management and payment release process is better. Thus, your vendor management gets better. So this opens up a whole lot of savings. And if you were to create a business case for just the payments getting onto the DLT itself, that itself comes out as positive within 6 months. So that has been one of the push factors for people to consider this blockchain-based platforms. And with the RBI opening up and granting legitimacy to cryptocurrency, whatever has been the block in the mindset of people towards adoption of blockchain, that's also cleared up. This has evicted a whole lot of interest in people, and we have seen lot more interest and inquiries and ideas to move towards the POC in these areas. So I just thought, I'll let's keep it crisp, because I understand most of you guys are very familiar with what blockchain does. And so I wanted to give a flavor on what is the real-time use case which people are doing, and how it is no more implementation to understand if blockchain is a thing for us. It's more of a thing to do the cost optimization in these times. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lekha and Surbhit. It brought out the essential of what we wanted to share with the audience today. And just a couple of points, what Surbhit, going back to what you said, and this is exactly what we also wanted to share today, that you don't really need to be a tech savvy guy, especially from the traders side, and especially for all those who are in this cog in the wheel, in the trade wheel. So tech has to be your enabler. And here is a platform where you don't need to go into understanding how it exactly works. You come onto the platform. It's like your private room network where you have your, your suppliers, bank, the transport and logistic company guys, the seller's bank, the seller, everybody is coming together in a secured way, transacting. It's a platform as simple as that, as collaborative of that. You really don't need to get into too much of understanding how that works. But the underpinning technology, however, as we mentioned, is blockchain. And why blockchain is important, again, going back to Surbhit's a couple of examples that you gave in the cases that happened. The good part about this is that you get assured of authenticity. Your records are immutable. So that's the essence of this. So please, again, come back to us after this. Raise your questions, raise your hand for question answer. We'll get into Q&A now. And come back to us. The pilot is very simple to deploy. For bank nodes, it's a matter of a couple of weeks, you'll be up and running. So nothing complicated about this. Let's get India's economy going. Let's get the global trade going. Need everyone onto this platform. Thank you. Could you open it up for Q&A, please?
Yeah, thank you, ma'am. I just opened the line. Request everybody to raise hand who want to ask the question, and I will unmute the line. Thank you.
Yeah, I think there is a question from AB Hong Kong. If you can unmute that line, please.
Yes, Mr. AB, I have unmuted your line. Please go ahead with your question.
Did I raise my hand?
You do, actually. Do you have a question?
Okay. No, I need to speak offline with Raji about something else. It's very interesting. I'm not directly involved in trade finance, but I would like to know if you have any presence in Southeast Asia or in North Asia, in China.
Yeah. Mr. Atul, would you like to take that question?
Sure. I think, yeah, we are headquartered out of Singapore, so we definitely have a presence.
Sorry, let me rephrase my question. There are huge trading companies in Thailand or Indonesia. Do you have them as clients as of today?
Right. Yeah, so we work from Singapore to cover those flows, and we have partners in Philippines. We are in discussion for a partner in Thailand as well as in Indonesia. But yeah, our model is to support it from Singapore for Southeast Asia operation with a partner in each of those markets. So yeah, certainly reach out to myself if there's an interest in Southeast Asia. If there's any interest in South Asia, in Indian subcontinent, reach out to Raji.
Okay, good. That's it. I'll be leaving you much.
And Manish, if you can, moderator, if you can unmute Manish's line.
Yes, Mr. Manish, please go ahead. Your
Hi,
line is
Atul.
unmuted.
Thanks for the presentation. Yeah, hi, Atul. This is Manish Shangvi. Am I audible to you?
Yes, yes.
Yeah. Yeah, Atul, I belong to Federal Bank and I have a very simple question. I can see many of my corporate clients onboarding into different blockchain platforms. So if I am dealing with say 10 different clients and those 10 different clients are on different blockchain platforms, does it mean that bank will have to be a member of all the blockchain platforms to participate in the trade?
Yeah, that's a great question, Manish. First of all, there are not many people who are onboarding into different platforms, right? It's because a lot of other what you hear is more about just POC and the trials, right? So I think there's a lot more of that happening as opposed to the production usage. It's all about the adoption, right? So it's all about the customers, your corporate customers finding value in terms of how they are seeing the uptake of it. Yeah, so I think, answer to that is, as a bank, you are also a service provider to your corporate customers. And if your corporate customer guides you to where they need you to be, you take a business call to be your corporate customers network, right? So it's really as simple as that. But at the same time, it's all about the adoption, Manish, and we tend to believe that adoption will drive few winners out of this, and there won't be one because it's a network. So the network needs to work together with different flows of products in and out, different originations, different geographies. All of that would play a part. But fundamentally, it's the customer who will decide. And you would, I suppose, as a bank also, you will follow the customer's guidance.
Right. Thank you. I have one more simple question. If the documents are presented under eUCP through the blockchain platform, does your system also help us in checking the documents which are presented under eUCP? I mean to say scrutiny of documents?
Yes. So obviously, there is a maker, checker, verifier, a process built into the platform, but it does provide the 80-20 rule, right? So you do an eyeball check as well, because it's recommended that you still do your eyeball check post the system verification. So, and it's also needed from your compliance and other AML point of view, that you do those checks. But yes, system does throw you and automate you and provide you with those maker checker processes, but we recommend there is an eyeball until it gets kind of ingrained into your ops team as well as into your backend processes, that this is something that you are now getting really good at it. So I think it will be based on the adoption experience and your comfort of kind of getting to more and more automated way.
Great. Thank you, Atul.
Excellent question. Thank you, Manish. Yeah, Shekhar, go for your question, please. If you have a question, either you want to put it into the chat or you want to unmute.
Yes, Mr. Shekhar, your line is unmuted. Please go ahead.
Yeah. Hi, Atul. Hi, Raji.
Hi.
I know Raji quite well. Thank you very much for inviting me, and this very different world altogether. Basically, I'm working for a shipping, not a shipping company. We supply paints, the marine paints to the shipping company. We are basically from Tokyo, but I report to the Singapore. I am heading Indian operations as the MD, and I report to Singapore. I just want to ask you very simple questions, because our supplies are happened worldwide, and it can happen anywhere in the world, because we supplied paints, marine paints to ships, basically. So we deal with only two banks, I believe, Bizo Bank and Bank of Tokyo, or MUFG Bank, because those are my group banks. MUFG is a group bank, because we are part of the Mitsubishi Group. Just I wanted to know how this chain will work. Suppose if we go with you, because I just have to meet Raji, understand again more in dynamics and how it can go. Then I can link you with my Singapore colleague, and then it can be done. But I am just wanted to prima facie understand here. Then I can meet her once the lockdown gets over, and understand from her. And I also can give you more contacts in shipping industry, because I day in day out work with all the shipping owners and ship management companies in India, and I know quite well them personally, many of these guys. So that can be done. But I just wanted to know how it can be helped us, because you talked only about Standard Chartered Bank and I think DBS. Yeah, DBS we have account in Singapore, but that is only for the, I think, salary accounts and everything. But the most of the commercial functions routes through MUFG Bank and Mizo Bank.
Thanks, Shekhar. Thanks for coming on this, and thanks for asking your questions. And yes, after the lockdown, we should certainly meet and discuss furthermore. And we'd be very happy if you could introduce us to your Singapore counterparts as well as other shipping and logistics organizations.
Yeah, no
in the
issues.
country. That will be good. So Atul, you go ahead and answer that, but I think MUFG is also there in this call, but go ahead and answer that.
Yeah, no, certainly. I think we do have a representation from MUFG in the call as well as, yeah, so I think we've been working with Mizo Bank as well as MUFG Bank in Singapore. So I think certainly in terms of the interaction and the support, we have it. It's about end customer or yourself having lines with those banks, and if you do, then I think it would be something that we could really discuss offline and provide you how this digitization would look like for your particular shipment that you may want to put it through this as a pilot. And like I think as earlier mentioned by Raji, we have a free pilot trial that's up available here. So I think we could maybe take this offline and, even while the lockdown is on, we could look at doing it another Zoom session and kind of get you onboarded.
Yeah, that will perfectly fine. I will get in touch with Raji, and then I can look forward for this. Thank you very much, Atul.
Thank you so much for asking the question.
Yes, I repeat, if you have any other question, you can raise your hand. I can unmute your line, or you can type the question in the chat window, please.
Yeah, I'm also mindful of the time, Raji. It's 2 minutes over the clock. So you want to maybe summarize and ask for the next steps?
Can we get a copy of this presentation, a soft copy in this? Something possible?
Yes, sir. We will circulate the the slide possible over the email. Thank you.
It may not remind me. So if you just give me a soft copy of this, it will be easy and helpful to take further.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you very much.
Yeah, over to you, Raji.
Thank you, everybody. I'm really happy to have you all here. Like I said, let's not stop the wheel here. Let's get this moving for India. Let trade happen in India. Let economy grow in India, and let's work together to make this quite successful. As I promised, this is not complicated. We have a couple of IT partners also on the call with us. We will get back to you, and you have a reach to end customers as well. So we'd be happy to engage with as many part of the ecosystem that we say. So ecosystem for us is the banks, the traders, the shipping companies, all of them, everybody who's part, including the IT folks. So we will take this offline. I've put my email ID on that. Please feel free to reach out to me. And the free pilot went on, mentioned by Surbhit, our end customer. I'd like to have some revenue for the pilot. So twice it has been told that it's free pilot, so I guess I'll have to go with that for now. So yeah, so call me up, hit me up for pilots, and let's start discussing very soon. And bank guys, it's very simple, like I said, to get on the note for you. So let's have a discussion on that too. So you guys who are in the call today are leaders. You guys are influencers within your organization. So please take this message back and ping me for more information that is required. We can organize in detailed session with your team as well as demo if required. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. If there's no other question, the webinar is coming to its end. Thank you so much for joining. Have a good evening.
Thank you.